The reason why we have a Trump is because we had a Ronald Reagan. Folks forget Ronald Reagan wanted to veto the Voting Rights Act. Everybody forgets that.
All those things are true.
But let me just say this. I know Reagan was a little bit more cleaned up and he spoke better and he was an actor. He was the governor of California. I get all that. But Reagan was just as insidious as Trump, policy-wise. But he was smarter. So let's not act like Trump is this rarity on its own. Trump is the hate that Republicans created. Right, the Southern strategy. Ronald Reagan opening his 1980 general election campaign in Neshoba County, Mississippi, where 4 civil rights workers were killed, and did a speech about states' rights. So I do think that
through his platform, he gave respect to the different states and governors, which has led to the reason today why all of these different states pulled out of some of the benefits of the Obamacare. So regardless of those issues, which are true, I won't contest those presidents and those representatives respected the rights of the states to say, this is what it is. And they would not have called the state of Georgia, in which there were other Republicans, and said, this is something different. I don't know what Lindsey Graham smoked to make him make the one phone call that he did, when he did. But that was very anti-American and very anti-Republican platform. That is, the foundation is that the people closest to the state should be able to rule themselves and make those decisions, which is from the very beginning when people made the decisions to let people vote absentee ballot in Philadelphia and all these different places. These Republican congressional members met and said it was okay, and then the federal government's now coming in and saying it's not okay. It builds a conflict.
But you know what, Alan? I hear you, brother, but I think the difference is back then during the Ronald Reagan years, the electorate was a lot less diverse. And Ronald Reagan wanting to veto the Voting Rights Act, to me, that does not appear to be somebody who cares about states' rights. So black folks—
Not everybody in that state, but so this is Ronald Reagan's omission on that, right? Because I've seen the Reagan thing, I've seen Behind the Door and all the programs.
I know, but let me just finish.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm just saying you didn't see it.
We can talk about it. I'm just saying that if it were a different electorate, if there were more, at this point you have brown folks, Latin folks migrating into the country. I mean, there was black folks fighting the John Lewises. There's plenty, Reverend C.T. Vivian, Jesse Jackson, plenty of folks fighting. But the electorate is so different now. They didn't realize the power of it's so different now. So I would just say, I hear what you're saying, that he believed in states' rights, but he believed in them only as it benefited him. This is somebody who was okay with the Confederate flag. This is somebody who—
Yeah, those are all about state rights. Those are clearly state rights. And Ronald Reagan was a big supporter of immigration. That's the one thing I defend.
Well, he was, but again, as it benefited him. So I just believe that if it was a different electorate— Look at George Bush. He was allegedly calling people to make sure that Brett Kavanaugh was confirmed. I'm just saying that, to me, a Reagan Republican and a Trump Republican are not that different. And I know folks want to act like they are different. Oh, they want to romanticize Reagan. I lived in the Reagan era. It was hell. Where was my states' rights for a living wage? Where was my states' rights for the horrible the welfare queen narrative? Where was my states' rights when you had crack cocaine disparities and black folks in Philadelphia going to jail for longer sentences than white folks dealing cocaine in a suburb? Where was my states' rights then? So if your states' rights are rooted in oppressing black people and poor people, I'm not here for it.
I will also say that 20 states increased their living wage on January 1. So there was an increase in minimum wage in 20 states on January 1 of this year.
Wait, of this year?
Of this year.
Of this year. Oh, I thought you were talking about the Reagan years. Okay. So that's all that I'm saying. That's all that I'm saying. That I just can't. I just struggle because this is a man who was fiercely anti-black, fiercely anti-poor, right? Fiercely. So I just say states' rights. Now, it was more about the rights of upholding the ruling class. And part of the reason why we are where we are economically, for all the folks who say, oh, as far as black economics and black wealth, a lot of that goes back to Ronald Reagan's tax bill and the policies that he tried to continue that rolled over post Jim Crow, whatever.
I have quibbles with what you said about the Reagan sort of way, because there were a lot of Black people who were there standing with Reagan on the platform about drug enforcement, because at the time it was something as simple and as crass as just say no. So, I mean, many people played a role in that, not just the president and thinking
Reagan only had one Black person in his cabinet.
Yeah, regardless of the one Black person in his cabinet, there were still Black people among the congressional Black people that were still there, and Black leaders who, and church members who were standing along that concept of sort of saying, we need to get this off, we need to reform. I mean, I think, you know, it's easy to look back. Let me finish.
Alan,
It's easy to look back retrospectively.
You defend Reagan, don't you?
Damage that was there and say it was malicious and he was malevolent and all these things.
It was malicious. He was anti-poor. He wanted to veto the voting. Do you think Reagan had some great love for Black people and Black communities? Do you know what he did with the Black Panthers when he saw them when he saw them arming themselves?
Like I said, I saw the Reagan special.
Rights.
I saw the Reagan special.
Reagan.
I'm a product of Georgia, right? And I was a Reagan Republican, right? I was in the room at the table, carrying the signs, all that crap, right? And in the Newt Gingrich district while I was at Morehouse College, right?
He was also a devil.
Right. He has been shown to be, but it shows you, but what he was a stress test that we failed, because he's the person who originally broke our Congress, right? The issue has been that we believe that we are all have this sort of badge of honor that no one's going to be bad and we have no way to correct it. And even to today, Newt Gingrich is not, they're still interviewing him on Fox, and every now and then he'll appear someone else, they're asking his opinion about whatever, when in fact, he's the first person that broke Congress, right? And that's the same thing that happened with this president. He came in and he showed exactly how someone can use the presidency for their personal benefit. It was a stress test, meaning it was a factor to see exactly how strong the democracy was. And sure, we survived, but we are much weaker in the world and much weaker as a country and way more divided for not being able to assess to say, everybody who gets in this room may not be just a valid intent. So maybe we do need to lock the doors a little bit, right? So I do think there's a conversation about that, but you know, I try not to demonize groups of people who followed something. And to this day, while I don't think Reagan did everything right, and I'm not gonna, hold a sign up to him the same way of Lincoln or any of the rest of the founding fathers to say that they had these issues, there was some good intent there. There's a mix of things there.
I don't think we can agree to disagree. I think Reagan had no good intent. I think that he was about pushing a white nationalist narrative. Somebody who had good intent, like I said before, would not open his general election campaign in Neshoba County, Mississippi, where civil rights workers were killed, and did a speech about states' rights. He believed in the Southern strategy. And when you talk about drug policies that he passed, Reagan is part of the rise of the crack epidemic. So really, he had more control on how people on disparities, on sentencing disparities, he had more control over that, right? He's a part of that rise of the 1986 anti-drug abuse law, the 1988 anti-drug abuse law. Like, he's a part of that. I mean, read Michelle Alexander, the new Jim Crow, on how there appeared to be a welcoming of drugs and guns coming in our community. So I think Reagan appealed to his base, and we just see it differently. But I don't think he had good intent for Black communities. He had one Black person in his cabinet who was the Secretary of HUD, just one. If you cared about Black communities, you would have more than one. You would have more than one, because they can't speak for us. They're not representing us. You were holding that Reagan sign, weren't you?
Just sort of, yeah. I mean, I think there's a time and place test for that to sort of evaluate that to a prism, and I think you're not being fair about the cabinet, because Congress didn't have.
I'm being fair about Reagan's cabinet. Reagan's cabinet, who they were attacking African organizations for fighting back against apartheid. Why would we be fair to them? Why would we be fair to them? Wait, you're a Haitian American. The way in which the Haiti was destroyed was hurt directly with HIV and AIDS, and Reagan wouldn't even say the word AIDS until 1987.
Listen, the Clintons did way more worse than Ronald Reagan could ever do.
On what?
On the island, with regards to the Haitian development.
Wait. Well, we could get into that's. Maybe.
So that conversation, there's blood everywhere.
You better die on that hill for Reagan now.
I'm not going to die on the hill for him, but I'm just sort of saying.
You were on that shining light in the hill. What did Bush say?
No one is all good and all bad. except
He was
for
pretty
Trump.
effing bad, but it's all good.